An original.
From Story Studio Network.
Well, here we go. Look at that. It is the 10th day of July. It's a Monday. Welcome in. Dave Trafford here for Now and Next, Story Studio Network. And thanks to all of you who reached out over the weekend responding to my post on various social media. That's already plural, you idiot. Got onto the threads and posted my Friday thread. We're going to do that regularly now on Now and Next. I know normally we don't post on a Friday. We get into the news and views and issues and stories that we think affect you and your life and your family and stuff that you're not necessarily just going to be able to chase. And we do all of this, by the way, without using the Google search. We go to the source, we find the stories, reputable, trustworthy news organizations, news sites, and yeah, we pay for it when necessary. Some of it's out there. You know, you can fire up the CBC News app. Doesn't cost you anything. I mean, we're already paying for that, but that's another story. But then there's the Toronto Star, the Globe and Mail, other sites that have stuff behind a paywall. Yeah, I'm paying for it to get my news, and I would encourage you to do the same thing. That's what's at the heart of this. It's about who actually pays for the news. Don't get me started all over again. But it shouldn't be government, unless it's a public broadcaster. We got one of those already. And it sure shouldn't be big tech. Because once they start paying for it, they own it, effectively. Pretty hard to hold Meta and Google to account with good investigative journalism if they're the ones that are paying for it, right? So that's what we do here. Anyway, on the occasion of last Friday, I've noted that normally I would be sitting at the round table on Moore in the Morning with John Moore on News Talk 1010. I have been summarily dismissed from the show. And as I explained elsewhere, not really clear why, except that there's some thought we're competitors. So anyway, I will wear that badge of honor and move on. So thanks to those of you who jumped in, subscribed to the YouTube channel over the weekend. Story Studio Network is the YouTube channel if you want to take a look at what's going on. And you can find me on Threads, as well as other social media, at Dave Trafford. So we're going to use the time that we normally would have spent on the radio on Friday mornings to give you sort of a summary view of what's going on in our world here at Story Studio Network and on Now and Next particularly. And so we'll drop that into the Threads feed. We'll also have it on the YouTube channel. And the audio will be where you're listening to this right now. So all kinds of opportunities to check in on Now and Next. So you know what? And just given the way things have played out, I'm, again, grateful for the support. Thanks for those of you who emailed and DM'd and made comments on social media. Thanks for all of that. If you really like and enjoy what we're doing here, tell a friend. I mean, seriously. That goes a long way in actually helping grow a show like this. We can do all of the social media ads we want. We get very little conversions, not just us. That's just generally speaking. The best way for a show to thrive is for those who enjoy listening to it to tell other like-minded folks, hey, you should check out Now and Next at Story Studio Network. And that actually turns into a lot of downloads. It turns into a lot more listening. And that's great for us. It's great for the show. And we hope it's good for you, because as long as the show thrives and you're enjoying it, then that's all good. So it's the least you can do. And you don't have to do it. You don't have to pay anything, right? We're just grateful if you would be the word of mouth champion for the show. If you want to share it on your social media feeds and do that, that would be great too. But, maybe your brother-in-law doesn't know about us and you think he would really enjoy this, or a coworker, perhaps she would really enjoy it. And away we go. So, all right, let's get into it today. There's lots to get to, and we're going to, we're going to talk a little bit more about threads. But first, let's go back a week. We had 17.01 degrees Celsius. That was an all-time global record, temperature record set last Monday, a week ago today. Then we had 17.18 Celsius set Tuesday, repeated on Wednesday, and then on Thursday, 17.23 degrees Celsius. And it was the hottest day ever on this planet so far as the recordings go back to 1979. But not only that, Canada's far north saw its hottest temperature ever recorded. Fort Good Hope in the Northwest Territories witnessed an astonishing high temperature, 37.4 degrees Celsius Saturday afternoon. The high in Fort Good Hope eclipsed the community's previous all-time record of 35 degrees, and that was back on July the 5th, 1998. I have put the link in the show notes. You can check it out. The Weather Network has more to say on that. For all the concern over violence in Toronto, Toronto Police Service's Public Safety Data Portal says shootings are down more than 30% year over year in the city. Shooting deaths down 50%. Gunshot injuries down nearly 20%. Well, that should all be good news. Problem is, it's not the whole story. The gun violence story here in Toronto is now about where the shootings are happening, not how many necessarily. Like it or not, it's happening more frequently in parts of town typically considered to be safe neighborhoods. The latest happened near Yonge and Bloor on Charles Street this morning. Police got the call around 6 a.m. A man and a woman wounded, taken to hospital. We're told suspects fled in a vehicle. Good news, if any. Their area was still relatively quiet given the hour. But we used to live in that neighborhood. We lived right there on Charles Street. It's worth noting the area just west of Yonge, south of Charles, fairly residential. And there's a daycare in that apartment building at the corner of Charles and Balmuto, just steps from where that shooting occurred. Now, this comes on the heels of the midday broad daylight shooting. It was a shootout, actually, in Leslieville. It killed 44-year-old Karolina Huebner-Makurat. She was struck by a stray bullet and died of her injuries. Yeah. Happened at Queen, East, and Carla. I mean, this, if you know the area, and I'm there a lot, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law live in the neighborhood, it's a bustling stretch. I mean, you've got restaurants and bars and convenience stores and fish and chip shops. I mean, it was midday on a Friday in July. Are both shootings gang-related? Yeah, could be. Sure sounds possible when the Charles Street suspects bolt in a car and the Leslieville murder is the result of two armed men settling a score out in the street. It reminds me of the Boxing Day crossfire murder of Jane Creba, happened in 2005. Now, the only difference here is Creba's murder caused a public and a political outcry to crack down on the gangs, the guns, and the violence. Why? Because Creba was killed in a neighborhood we all thought of as safe. Where is the public and the political outcry and the action? Not just the, oh my, this is a tragedy and it shouldn't happen in this neighborhood. We need action, and we need it now. From The Economist this morning, an interesting question posed. Does the U.S. need more unemployment to stabilize the economy? Sounds counterintuitive for most of us, but you know what? For every unemployed person in the U.S. right now, there are 1.6 jobs available. For every unemployed person in America, there are 1.6 jobs available. So unemployment, pretty low. I'm quoting from the story in The Economist. Since February 2020, before COVID hit America, the economy has added nearly 4 million jobs, putting employment above its long-term trend line. There do not appear to be many workers left on the sidelines. Some 84% of prime-age workers aged between 25 and 54 now participate in the labor force. That's the most since 2002, and just a percentage point off an all-time high, close quotations. So the implication here is that as long as those numbers hold, the battle to lower inflation becomes more and more difficult. And of course, interest rate hikes are supposed to be the cure, but increases by the Fed to date haven't slowed the labor market down and have only managed to make things that much more expensive. And as I said off the top, Threads is the new shiny thing in social media. The new Meta platform, called the Twitter killer, launched 4 days ago. And right now, Team Zuckerberg is already boasting tens of millions of users. Let's get into it. So I'm not sure, how many of you out there were sort of enthralled with Threads over the weekend, but I probably spent way too much time flipping through, scrolling through, trying to find out exactly what the platform had to offer. Is it better? What does it do? How do you kind of deal with navigating it? What are the sort of the pitfalls, downfalls, whatever it might be? So we thought we'd get Ritesh Kotak in here. He is a lawyer who specializes in a number of things, including cyber and tech, and of course a cyber tech strategist for some time now, and a friend of the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Are you on Threads?
I am on Threads. I signed up the second it came out, and I got the notification. It was I got it. I signed up, and I've been playing around with it.
So a lot of people did the same thing. I mean, I sort of pre-ordered, I think is the phrase they used, the app, and it's based on your Instagram app, basically, and your account there. So it just took all of the followers and the et cetera that you have, and it applies it to your Threads account. And it seems so easy. But as I was doing this, I was thinking of you in the back of my head. I'm thinking, okay, just by clicking this button, what exactly am I doing? Because there really wasn't the opportunity to sort of read the disclaimer, as it were, in any other place where we would be signing up for something like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. There was one line of where you can view the privacy policy, and it's actually Instagram's privacy policy. So Meta, the parent company, literally you got to go to the privacy section, scroll down, and it's like voila, what you see on Instagram is kind of what you're going to get with respect to Threads. If you're going into the App Store, you can go view what's called the privacy nutrition label of all the data that they could potentially collect or have the ability to collect from you as well. Health-related information, your location, your contacts. Those are kind of those standard items that a lot of these apps attempt to collect. Doesn't necessarily mean they are collecting, but if people wanted to review the privacy policy and see exactly what's being taken, it wasn't easy.
Yeah, it was kind of flashed by you in a hurry, and I think with that number of downloads and uptake of the app in such a hurry, I'm guessing not a lot of people were paying a great deal of attention to that stuff. Now, having said that, I mean, I kind of went into it eyes wide open from that perspective, knowing that whatever I was doing on Instagram, for the most part, was being mirrored in what I was going to do on Threads. So let's get into the whole, is it the Twitter killer? I mean, is that even a possibility? Or is Elon Musk going to kill Twitter before Threads does?
I don't know. I wish this is one of those moments. I really wish I had a crystal ball so I can be a gajillionaire and make the right decisions. This one's interesting. I think there's been alternative Twitter-like apps, so microblogging, text-based apps out there. We saw Mastodon. We saw Blue Sky. The problem with these apps is Blue Sky, you need an invite code. Mastodon was a little bit clunky. And you're starting from fresh. You need to recreate your community. You got to refollow individuals. You got to learn the platform. When you go to Threads, you don't have that issue. There's 330 million active Twitter users. Now, there's over a billion Meta users. And the fact that it did integrate in with Instagram, which, by the way, you didn't have to do. You did have the ability to create a brand new account. I don't think that would have really worked out because you're, again, starting from scratch. But you did have the ability to import just everything from Instagram. And the latest numbers, I think it was 2 days ago, Mark Zuckerberg, is it threaded? Is that the word, or posted on Threads? I'm still trying to figure out the lingo here.
Yeah, if I'm
Let's
a
just say
threader,
threaded.
I don't know what it is. Yeah, exactly.
A threader.
Yeah.
That they've reached 70 million downloads. And
Wow.
Last I checked, it was up over 90 million now. So the numbers are increasing. It'll be interesting to see in the coming weeks. Does it keep this momentum going? Do people that are on Twitter and also on Threads prefer Threads all of a sudden? And are content creators going to exclusively move to Threads? Is advertising dollars going to move? I think that is what I'm looking out for. But yeah, there have been Twitter alternatives, but this one is a lot different.
Well, and it's interesting you should say that, because as I was doing it, I thought I caught myself saying, but I know what I can expect from Facebook. I know what I can expect from Instagram. Now, whether or not I trust Zuckerberg is another thing, but I know what I'm getting into there, as opposed to a brand new platform to me, having to recreate my community. So there's something there where there's already wind under the wings here.
Yeah, isn't it funny that Mark Zuckerberg and Meta are kind of being seen as this like savior?
Exactly.
Like I had to just stop and pause and be like, what are we doing here? And it was interesting also because Jack Dorsey, the original founder of Twitter, and then Elon Musk amplified his message. Before the launch of Threads, they took a screenshot of the privacy nutrition label of Threads and did the exact same thing for Twitter. And you could see that one was significantly greater than the other. I'll let you guess which one was greater than the other.
Exactly.
And it was interesting, right? Kind of the battle line has been drawn, and Twitter executives coming out and saying, this is the platform. Why? Because there's stability on our platform, and there is some truth to that. I think it was just over the Canada Day long weekend when Elon Musk decided to change a policy on Twitter with how many tweets you can read, how many impressions you can read. And that, I think it was 6,000 if you're a Twitter Blue subscriber. And then he just comes out and tweets again. Now it's 8,000. Now it's 10,000. And people were complaining. They said, I can't see tweets. I can't see tweets on my feed. And when you have people that can't see tweets, what does that mean? As a company, it means that you're not collecting data. You don't know what people are liking. That means they don't have access to advertisers as well. And if I'm an advertiser, if I'm a content creator, and now my core audience is not able to get my message, that becomes problematic. And I think Meta actually accelerated their deployment timeline to the public. And the reason they did that was they were capitalizing on the fact that Meta is making policy changes on a whim. People are extremely upset and are looking for alternatives. And it seemed like they struck when the iron was hot.
So you said Meta, you meant Twitter was making them on a whim.
That's correct. Sorry, yeah. Twitter was making it on a whim, not Meta.
Yeah.
Meta just quickly just said, let's just get this app out there.
We're in the game now. Yeah, well, you knew it was a crisis in this country because that weekend coincided with free agency weekend in the NHL. And all I heard from the sports reporters were they couldn't post or they couldn't follow the trades that were going on in the NHL. And it sounds like a small thing, but it is sort of this microcosm of the ability of companies to do business on social media platforms. And whether you want to say it's our own fault or not, that's the way we have migrated our communication strategy in many ways. So to actually have that instability, I think was, to your point, one of the things where people said, okay, I had enough. Here's an alternative. They jumped in right away. Things I have noticed that are different. No ads that I can see yet on Threads. Now, I don't know how long that's going to last, and there's no promoted necessarily tweets or threads that are out there so far. But you got to think that if we get that many downloads at this rate over the next couple of months, it's going to be pretty attractive for people wanting to put their money in advertising.
Absolutely. And I think when I first downloaded it, which was probably hours from when it launched, or maybe even an hour or two after it was available in the Canadian App Store, one thing that was quite amazing was just how many influencers were already on the platform
Yeah.
and posting. And if you were Meta verified, that blue check mark actually carried over to Threads as well. So you're not recreating all the goodwill and all of your hard work that you've done on Instagram. You're just not starting from fresh. So this is very different. Like, I think if you're Elon Musk, you're worried, and I think if you're Mark Zuckerberg, you got a big smile on your face.
There's no question. The other side of it is, and I saw a lot of people trying to navigate it and say, well, I'm in here now, and all I see are people I don't know, people I don't necessarily follow. And I saw some commentary over the weekend that you actually have to work the muscle of, being active to go out and follow certain things or, like certain posts to create the AI muscle for your purposes to say, okay, oh, you follow Ritesh and Dave, that's great. So now you're going to see more of Ritesh and Dave as opposed to just sort of sitting out there passively and hoping that you see Ritesh and Dave without interacting with them.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how the platform continues to develop. The way I kind of there were some interesting things when you were downloading the app. It asked that it told you that there's going to be something called a feediverse, which was interesting. The fact that if we just look at how Facebook is run and some of these other apps as well, Mastodon, Discord, you got servers, community servers. And I think at some point on Threads, there's going to be community servers as well, where you'll be able to connect with particular topics and similar to Facebook groups, be able to connect with individuals on at your workplace or at your school and just see the feed. If you clicked on that particular group, the feed from those particular identified individuals or individual accounts. It's going to be interesting how this platform develops. I think the fact that they still don't have promoted threads or advertising on the platform just further reiterates the fact that they rushed to get this out because it was all about timing. And I think the timing and the deployment actually paid off. But yes, there's going to be tons of updates. There's going to be tons of bug fixes. It's one thing to test the app with 100 people or 200 people. It's another thing to have millions of people on the app, and then you see what works, what doesn't work. So yeah, that AI machine is going to roll. It's going to make suggestions. It's going to continue to collect data, and the app, it will evolve. The question now becomes is, are people going to stay?
Yeah, exactly. And will it meet their expectation or their need, as the case may be? Will it, survive up against Twitter on the one hand? The other thing that sort of makes me think that they pushed this out in a hurry, there's no desktop version or a laptop version that for Threads. It's strictly on your mobile device.
Yes, it's strictly on your mobile device, and that's because Instagram itself is also mobile first, let's say, right? There are going to be third-party apps, I'm sure, where you can schedule content. You can post. I keep saying post from. I guess it's thread from, right? I just got to get used to all the different terminology. But I'm sure like that's going to be items that are going to be addressed in the future. But yes, right now it was, and as it should be. Any company that develops any type of apps, they don't say let's make the website first or let's make the desktop version first. It's a mobile first world, and they've got to make sure that they hit the two big platforms, Android and iOS, right off the bat. Otherwise, they're going to have problems.
When you look at the way this is developed, it's sort of an interesting lesson in more of an entrepreneurial path. How often have you heard somebody say, we're going to do this, but we want to make sure we get it perfect before we actually launch or we, open the store or whatever the case may be. This is a pretty good example of being able to say, here's the product. We know it's a process that's, so it's a product that's in the works, but right now you've got the basics and we're learning as we go. I won't overuse the cliche of building the plane as we fly because it's not quite that critical, but it has that feel to it that there's something of a lesson in here in terms of how startups work. And it's funny to think of Meta as a startup, but they really are taking a startup posture here.
Yeah, and it's relentless incrementalism, right?
Yes. Yeah.
You start with right. You start with a MVP, a minimum viable product. I guess this is more than minimal because this isn't their first rodeo. They've had success with obviously Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. So the Oculus, right? So they're not starting from scratch when it comes to developing. But yeah, it was you get your MVP out, your minimum viable product, and then you just keep reiterating in what they call sprints. So anytime there's a potential new feature, anytime that people complain and say this doesn't work or we need more of this and less of that, and you listen and you start making those changes, and by the end of it, you have something that people actually want to use, and that's the way tech works. And yeah, they are taking this startup like approach, and I think it's going to pay off.
So here's the interesting wrinkle in all of this, and some of the arguments that were coming out or questions were coming out over the weekend. It's a Meta product. Meta right now engaged in a standoff with the federal government over C-18 and deciding that on Facebook they would not publish Canadian news because they don't want to have to pay for the links, etc. Here we've got Threads quite easily and readily publishing Canadian news. My thinking is the reason they're doing that is because there's no advertising yet on the site, so that they're not being accused of, nor can they say that they're making any money off of advertising on any of the content on Threads. Now, that's likely to change, but I'd be curious to see whether or not they're going to sort of tinker with that around the edges in terms of how they navigate or negotiate their relationship vis-a-vis Canadian news.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I was also thinking about the Bill C-18 implications, the Online News Act, when it comes to Meta products in general. And I think Meta's been pretty clear. We're going to yank Canadian news links. They're just not going to be a thing on our platform if the bill is passed. Well, the bill was passed, and now they're looking at how they're actually going to be implementing the bill. The Canadian government has decided to pull advertising. So we've seen other provinces and organizations do the same. I think Quebec said that they're going to be pulling their advertising as well off Meta platforms. Yeah, they launched Threads. I don't think they really thought about all the policy issues around Threads. Case in point, that Threads didn't even have its own privacy policy.
Right.
It essentially used Instagram's privacy policy. I'm sure that this is going to get looped in. If if there's no links on Instagram, there's going to be no links on Threads. They just haven't caught up to how this all fits in with the Online News Act and other acts and legislation around the world that they're going to have to deal with as well. It's another Meta platform that's open to the public and would probably fall within the definition within these acts of a organization that would need to negotiate with news agencies.
So what's the next thing that you're looking for to more or less say this is a foundational moment for Threads? And I think back to, say an opportunity to stream the Super Bowl or something really spectacular like that, and it becomes the exclusive site or platform.
So Meta does do a lot of exclusive things, and I'm sure that it will be really simple for them to get some exclusive streaming rights or events or something like that. Just even with Oculus, I think there was a partnership with the NBA, the National Basketball Association, to do VR courtside games using their headset. So they're always looking for new and interesting ways of engaging the Meta community. So I'm sure we're going to see some exclusive stuff on Threads. But to me, I think the next big thing I'm looking for is are content creators and influencers going to say, I've had enough. I'm actually moving from Twitter to Threads. It was really interesting. Mr. Beast, who's a YouTuber, actually went on Twitter and said, I can't read I can't see my posts, because he got caught up in the whole I've reached my 10,000 view limit, and he couldn't see his posts. So if we have influencers of that caliber saying we're going to start moving exclusively to Threads, this is when it becomes really interesting. If we see brands saying we're only going to advertise on Threads and move dollars and cents, and we will get those numbers because I'm sure Meta will publish some of these numbers. That is where I think that pendulum is going to start swinging farther on a particular platform. That's what I'm looking for. I don't know about exclusive streaming is really going to be that big game changer. I think content and not exclusive reoccurring content from individuals that people and the public actually want to follow. That is where we're going to see the differentiator. But there's a lot of moving parts. One thing I learned is you never count Elon Musk out. The battle line has been drawn. Can both platforms coexist? That's another thing, right? Will people just say, I'm going to post certain type of content on Threads and I'm going to post certain type of content on Twitter? That's a possibility as well. It's, maybe they'll look at it this way. It's not getting a slice of the pie, is how do we make this pie bigger?
Well, and in fact, I think that's how people use other platforms. I mean, I post differently on Facebook than I do on Twitter, than I do on Instagram, than I do on LinkedIn. I mean, there's a certain personality about all of those. And I guess at this point, we don't know quite what the personality of Threads is.
Yeah, I think we're still trying to figure that out. I've been doing a few posts going through what other people are saying on the platform. It's funny because I felt the first few days was all anti-Twitter content.
Right. Yeah.
It was great, like some fantastic memes, by the way. But yeah, I think people will figure it out. It's clear that Threads isn't going away. You already have, as far as I know, over 90 million users and growing. The question now becomes is, do those users become active daily users? Do they get their advertising right, and do they get exclusive content? And if that happens, there's going to be only, I guess there's two questions. Number one is can they coexist with Twitter, or B, is there going to be winners and losers?
And will there be a Donald Trump on that site? I mean, that was the thing that occurred to me all weekend long. How long is it going to be before somebody coaxes Trump to get onto Threads? I mean, I realize
is Truth Social still a thing? Like,
yeah,
is that
apparently
still a thing?
Yeah, he's
right?
still using it.
I think he is posting it on it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, all good. Ritesh Kotak, thank you, sir. It's always good to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Now and Next is produced by Becky Coles. Our production manager is Jamie Nickerson. Audio editors are Mike Trutler and Drew Garner. And our sonic logo designer is Greg McDonald. Our executive producers are Dave and Aaron Trafford.
This is SSN.
Story Studio Network.